Welcome to RMM Help. This session covers stage 3 of PPMs in RMM, dealing with the asset register, and the progress bar at the top shows in green we have already set up our control file and supporting code files and PPMs. This flowchart shows the process of creating our asset register and adding PPM references containing active jobs with a PPM start date. And that simple process automatically creates our PPM planning year. Therefore, if we add or remove a PPM reference from an asset, it will increase or reduce our work plan with the number of jobs in a PPM. Now that our PPMs have been created, we can look at the asset register and at a typical asset and see how straightforward it is to add one or more PPMs. Just before we look at the assets, those users who utilize the help desk will be familiar with the term generic assets. Although we refer to a generic asset, it is best described as a potential work area such as plumbing or electrical installations. But by setting them up as generic assets, we can have them appear in every combination of a site, building and location, but without having to set up each one in the asset register, and therefore that reduces the register size. However, when we refer to PPMs, we carry out PPMs on real tangible assets, example, medical devices, plant, equipment, buildings, vehicles, etc. And we suggest that you view the help tutorial on generic assets before you start setting up your PPMs. Just to summarize again at this point, we only carry out PPMs on real assets. So if you wanted to carry out a PPM on, say, electrical installation, you would need to create that in the asset register, so an asset of electrical installation with its unique location and an asset ID. We've now gone to the asset register and we're looking at a typical asset record, and in this instance we're looking at an asset for a whole building. We have chosen this because we can show how all relevant documentation for legal, compliance, health and safety, etc. can be stored. And as a building would typically have multiple PPMs attached, we can view those also. This asset has a description of 22 Rose Lane, and the site is Applebury Unit 22 Rose Lane, and the building is whole building, and the location is whole location. This is the document tab, which presents a scrolling form where we can attach and display unlimited number of documents. We're not displaying the first 3 columns in this view, and they are source, which is where the document was added. Example, it might have been added from the model file or from the asset register. A column for the date it was attached, and the document type and reference. The yellow callout points to the hyperlink column where each document listed is a hyperlink, and the documents can be opened, saved as, viewed and printed. We have scrolled this view to the right and you can see the column headed printed with job, where the first 3 documents say yes, and when we come to print a job docket, these documents are available to be printed if required. And that's actually quite important, because we can print those documents either for a requisition job from within the help desk, or, as we're talking about now, with a PPM. We've now gone to the PPM tab, which presents a scrolling form where we can attach and display unlimited number of PPMs. We've got 4 PPMs on this view, and we can see PPM ID, PPM start date, the week number the job is scheduled for, the PPM reference, and the work description. Our PPMs are for emergency lighting, Legionella testing, fire door inspection, and the final one is for a compliance certificate for a gas boiler. We could, of course, have created an asset for the gas boiler and attached the PPM directly to that. In the green callout, it says we can attach and remove PPMs from our asset from here. And if we take that option, we get a list of PPMs and a calendar control to select the PPM start date. A little later, we'll explore how we can add a PPM to multiple assets at a time. Finally, the blue callout says we can print PPM details report from here, and we'll take a look at that now. What we've just seen in the PPM tab was summary information regarding a PPM job. However, the PPM detail report displayed here shows all of the PPM details for all jobs for a selected PPM reference. It displays the frequency, series, KPI priority, work type, contractor, estimated time and cost, staff designation, the no move and active tick boxes. Risk details are also shown, and the job details are listed in full. This is a 2-page report, and the second page that we can see in the graphic at the bottom here is a list of all assets with this PPM attached. Therefore, we can get a view not only of the jobs within that particular PPM, but we could also see what other assets that's been added to. We're now going to see how we can use the alternative process of attaching PPMs to assets, this time from within the PPM section. The benefit of adding PPMs to assets from here, as opposed to within the asset record, is that we can add PPMs to multiple assets in one simple operation. It should be noted, though, that if we cascade a PPM to multiple assets, we'll have a single PPM start date for all of the assets selected. You may choose to do that and then fine-tune those dates on an asset-by-asset basis. This is the PPM reference list, and we select the required PPM. In this instance, I've highlighted fire doors, and we use the option in the Actions panel, Add this PPM to assets. This displays the asset summary list, and you'll notice that the PPM details are brought forward into the Actions section just for reference, and I'll just highlight that with I'll just go over it with the mouse where you can see the PPM details. And then we can use the filter row to filter for the required assets. And in this instance, in the asset description, and I'll just move the mouse over again, we've filtered for fire doors, and it's found 32 records. We then use the Select All option and select Add PPM to selected assets, and the chosen PPM reference will automatically be added to the selected assets, but the final thing to be done is to add the PPM start date. Having got the PPM reference onto our multiple assets, we need to add the PPM start date. This form pops up automatically, and it contains a list of PPM week numbers and week start dates for a year either side of the current week. The date rows are coloured alternatively yellow and green every 12 rows. And as NHS estate users may be familiar with the concept of low weeks, highlighted in the list in grey shading enable a catch-up of any backlog work. So those low weeks occur every 13 weeks, so in weeks 13, 26, 39 and 52, no PPMs would occur on those weeks apart from those with a weekly frequency. If any PPM frequency other than weekly occurs on a low week, it's automatically moved into the next week. We can select our start date either from a calendar control or by entering a year and a week number, which will filter the data list accordingly. Although this list displays a year before and a year after the current week, we can enter any other values into the past and future fields, and the list will expand accordingly. The PPM start date is the date from which our PPM job frequencies will first occur. If our frequency was an annual PPM, and our PPM will need to be 52 weeks before the week we want the PPM to appear in our PPM plan. If we wanted our PPM to start in week 3 in 2014, we'd simply select week 3 in 2013, as we can see in this example, to give us the correct date from which to calculate the start date. And as can be seen, that's automatically being calculated here and is highlighted in orange. We use the Select Date option and we're prompted with a message box confirming the usage of the chosen date. And that concludes the section on the PPM setup in relation to assets. We now need to go on to stage 4 of our PPM setup and consider the operation of planning.